African head of states and government will gather here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the union's capital, and they will discuss on some of the pressing issues of the continent. But how African Union has undergone to address some of the enduring challenges of the continent, such as peace, security, development, integration, and so on. Hello and welcome. My guest for today is Professor Brock Hailo. Professor, a very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Professor, let me take you to 2024 Africa Union agenda. One of the top agenda of Africa Union Summit last year was realizing peace and security in the continent. Do you think the Union has done enough in terms of realizing peace and security in African soil? What's your evaluation and assessment?
A great question. Peace and security has become and still is the #1 issue in the African continent. It's a worrisome issue. We have solved some problems, but we couldn't manage to solve many of the issues and problems. There are attempts, but still we go forward and 2 steps backward again. There is hope, and I will say this with a certain empirical evidence. The African Union have reached a point where, let's say, governments that have come to power illegally by force, let's say military governments, will not find representation. This is a new phenomena. Countries are being suspended if they are unconstitutional. So there is a fight. We progress, as I said, and we slide back. We progress and slide back. But this political peace and security issue is a big challenge. But we are trying to address this issue.
Development was one of the top agenda of Africa Union Summit in 2024. Of course, development has been the agenda of African Union, the core agenda of African Union since African independence. The former Organization of African Union was very much successful in liberating African countries from colonization, from European colonization. But African Union has not been successful in bringing in realizing development and prosperity which African people are aspiring.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
good question.
Where is the puzzle?
First, let's compare the 2 institutions. For the OAU, the main agenda was the emancipation of Africa, the liberation of Africa. So the decolonization of Africa was in state, it was in progress. So what we see is that there was a strong stand against, of course, apartheid at the time. A strong stand, a strong push to support the liberation of Guinea-Bissau, say Angola, Mozambique, and similar Namibia, at the time SWAPO, and then Frelimo in Mozambique, and in Angola also, the main party. They were supported by the OAU. And Africans in all developing countries in Asia and Latin America supported this. So these countries became free. When we come to this period, AU, it was set up, or it became the successor of OAU in 2002. It began to work. Okay. At this time, the whole of Africa is liberated politically. See, only one remains. That also is very argumentative, and that is the Western Sahara issue, contested by Algeria and Morocco. So that's the only outstanding. So literally, the whole continent is free. So now the issue has moved to economic and social development. It was the agenda then, it is still the agenda now. That will bring us to Agenda 2063, of course. So now, AU, what it wants to the record tells us, they have continued focusing on economic social issues like fighting poverty, illiteracy, providing health to the entire continent, infrastructure, roads, telecom, etc., etc. There is a wide range of issues that the African Union together works. Plus, countries in Africa are independent, but being independent does not mean there is peace and security. To your earlier question, peace and security, lack of that. So the focus has changed, but now the AU works on peace and security and economic and social issues. So the times have changed.
The times have changed. Let's talk about African representation and African participation in the global stage. Professor, African Union has been asking to get a permanent membership at the United Nations Security Council. Still, African Union has not secured permanent membership at the Council. What is the cost of misrepresentation at the United Nations Security Council?
When global matters and issues are discussed, even when African issues are discussed, Africans are not there. So that's unjust. In 1945, as a result of the Second World War, what we find is that a new global political hierarchical order was established, led by the United States, supported and backed by the British, France, and other Western countries. Okay, and then there was the Cold War period on the other side, the Soviet bloc, of course, at the time. So what we find is that the new global institution called the United Nations, which took over from the League of Nations, established a principle of veto powers. There is the General Assembly, and in the Security Council there will be 10 non-permanent countries elected 2 years from all across the world, and 5 powers with veto power. Yes? So that was the formula, even to this day. Widening this council was resisted literally by, I would say, by all of these countries. It didn't make sense. In politics, there is timing. We call it timing. When you knock at the door, 40 years ago, it wouldn't open, but now it has opened. Why? Because this desire by the Africans, desire by African leaders, the commitment, civic organizations, governments, even civic organizations within the Western world, the Europeans, they are all saying, we live in a very unjust world. We need to open it up and engulf the African into it, include the Africans into it. Okay, Africa has 1.4 billion people. By not doing that, you are putting aside 1.4 billion people. By the way, this opening up is not only for Africa, as a matter of record. This will be opened up also for giving a representation for the Asian continent, for the Latin American continent.
As you rightly said, Professor, recently we have witnessed a positive signal from United Nations Security Council and member states of the Security Councils, like you listed, Britain, France, United States of America, and others, in recognizing and addressing Africa's fair and legitimate quest for getting permanent membership at the United Nations Security Council. What will be the significance of securing permanent membership at the United Nations Security Council in fostering African Union's agenda?
The significance will be that any issue first discussed in the Security Council, which is of high magnitude, given the mandate of the Security Council, especially in matters of peace, security, global issues, is going to be discussed in the Security Council, and Africans are going to be present there. That's the significance. Second, issues of African origin, when they are discussed, like in the past, it's not going to be while Africans are absent in the council. They will be there present in the first row when these issues are discussed. By the way, I remember, statistics done about issues presented to the Security Council for the last many decades, especially in peace and matters, peace and security. At least 50% and above are African issues. So Africans were not represented. But now, any issue from now onwards about Africa directly is going to be in the presence of Africans discussed. Okay, so that's the significance.
The African leaders are expected to elect a new Africa Union Commission leadership. So what do you expect from the new leadership in terms of realizing Africa's development agenda, like 2063 agenda, African Continental Free Trade Area, and African Peace and Security Architecture?
Okay, thank you. All the outstanding agendas need to be followed up. All issues, including the so many topics and issues of 2063 should be implemented, should be followed up. Who is going to do what? We are going to see once they are elected. The AU is led by 8 people, not 1.
Yes.
They are called commissioners.
Commissioners,
The chairman, deputy chairman, and others. For instance, in matters of, like say, PAPS, or in matters of peace and security and political affairs, Bankole, he's from Nigeria. He's the top guy, who's a commissioner for politics. So When you see all those commissioners, they make sure they don't rock the boat. There is a certain degree of stability. You know, we don't want to see over-representation of East Africa or the under-representation of the Maghreb, North Africa. It is equitably. There is a certain formula. So it is a teamwork. It's not only one guy, but a teamwork. So 2063, all those agendas, the African free trade, peace and security, finding solutions to peace and security, like say in the Sudan, in West Africa, and other issues, all this will be handled, led by a chair, but 8 people. So I purposely underline it so that the audience, you need to know, it's not a one-man show. It's a teamwork that is being organized and worked out by the fathers of Africa.
Professor Brooke Hailu, thank you so much for sharing your deeper thoughts and insights regarding Africa and the upcoming African Union Summit.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.